Be without fear in the face of your enemies. Be brave and upright, that God may love thee. Speak the truth always, even if it leads to your death. Safeguard the helpless and do no wrong. That is your oath. Now, rise, knight, and see what God has in store for you. Hello, welcome to History Laid Bare. I am the bear, and I know what you're thinking. I look rather dashing in this armour, so don't worry, I'm going to leave this image on the screen while I introduce this video. William Marshal, Earl of Pembroke, served under 5 kings, served Henry III as his protector and regent of the kingdom, fought in many wars, led an army in his 70s, a martial warfare expert and a tournament champion many times. I mean, according to the poem that Marshal had commissioned for himself. He would live a long life and pass away in 1918. He was the sky and all its stars. Congratulations if you got that reference. He is considered England's greatest knight. Perhaps because he outlived most of his contemporaries and wrote his own history. Like I said, he commissioned a poem about his life. However, one cannot argue with the massive impact William Marshal's life had on the world around him. On screen right now, you are looking at the shield of William Marshal. This shield would go on to define what a knight is. Knights existed before William Marshal. However, William Marshal was part of the generation that would truly encapsulate the way that we see knighthood. So, without further ado, let us begin part 1 of this series entitled, very creatively, William Marshal. I hope this one starts happier than the last one. That whole Henry II arguing with his sons and the amount of war that was... Oh, this one starts with the anarchy. (1120). Henry I's only son and heir is dead. He dies in the White Ship disaster, a day of celebration and drinking which led to a tragedy. Henry's son William would board the White Ship to make the crossing from Normandy back to England. The English Channel is a fickle thing. It has protected England for a millennium. But on this day, the Channel will claim one of its princes. The ship sank with only one survivor, a butcher named Berold. Henry I is forced to name his daughter Matilda his heir. Matilda just so happens to be the Holy Roman Empress as well. She is perhaps the best choice, one of Europe's levers of power. She can raise an army but not lead it. Women weren't allowed to lead armies in this day and age. And she could handle the trickery of courtly life. Henry I forces the English nobility to swear fealty to Matilda. They swear that when God takes Henry, she shall rule. Henry I passes away in 1135 at Saint-Denis La Fame. Now, time for a history quiz for you all. What do we do now Henry I has passed away? Do we A, turn our back on all our promises and give the crown over to Stephen, Henry's relative, who may not be the best choice, however, is a man? Or plan B, we crown Matilda as Queen of England, and we accept that a woman is just as good as a man. After all, it is wrote in the Bible that the kingdom of God is within both man and woman. We can move past these silly notions that hold us back, and we can lead to a new world where women are on the same level as men, and we can build the kingdom of heaven on earth. Can anybody else smell that? Yeah, I can definitely smell that. Brother John, can you smell that? This bear smells of heresy! Kill him! No, God, no, I'm sorry. I meant King Stephen should be king. All hail, long live King Stephen! Stephen is crowned King of England. And Empress Matilda is not happy about this. But if it helps, nobody is very happy about this. King Stephen, he's not very good. Anyway, the crowning of Stephen triggers a civil war. A war named the Anarchy. It is between King Stephen and Empress Matilda, fighting over the English crown. It is during this war that William Marshal first makes his appearance in the history books.
Many times have I seen men in your state. Nothing stains the soul more indelibly than killing. Never have I felt so vile as standing victorious on a battlefield. The thrill of victory fades quickly.
The Anarchy is a terrible, bloody war. War is always awful, but this one is awful for several reasons. The main tactic at the time would be to engage in siege warfare. The worst thing that you could do would be to fight pitch battles. Pitch battles were rare at this point, that being one army facing another in open combat. This held so many risks because if you were defeated, that was it. That was your war over most of the time. Siege warfare gave you an opportunity to surrender, withdraw, that being if you were the attacker. If you were the defender, obviously you'd have to defend your castle. But even then, you have the opportunity to surrender and fight another day. If you fought an outright open combat in a field, one army versus another, that would be it. That's all your resources, that's all your manpower. So this war was fought mainly castle by castle, and that is a grueling, terrible, awful, slow war. This type of warfare leads to suffering on a mass scale. Both sides would deal in scorched earth tactics, basically destroying resources, so you made the war effort difficult at every stage. There's a loss in food, there's a loss in manpower. The effects of a civil war are felt throughout the country. No one wins in this type of war. Winning a battle in this type of war means, hooray, I've killed my neighbour Bob, now let's go and kill Steve across the road. It means you get to live for another day. Wars are always hell, but this type of war means that you're spilling the blood of your countrymen on your homeland. There's no victory in this. No one wins. A civil war ends when no one has the heart left to fight. And when someone does eventually win, they come to the throne and they say, right, who's going to be my new treasurer? And people turn to him and say, well, it used to be Bill, but Bill died in the war. In order to gain victory, you are killing the people that will be useful to you once you have victory. And it is during the backdrop of this war that William Marshal is born. He is born to parents John Marshal and Sybil of Salisbury. We think he was born 1146-ish. Historians still debate this. The first time he enters the history books, the very first time we hear of William Marshal, is in 1152, during the siege of Newby Castle. You see, John Marshal sided with Matilda during the Anarchy. And because he sided with Matilda, one of the ways to keep people in line back then, if you didn't want them to go to war with you, was to take a hostage from them. So King Stephen takes William Marshal as a hostage from John Marshal. This being one of John Marshall's sons, he thinks this would keep him in line. It doesn't. So King Stephen has to lay siege to Newbury. I keep calling Newbury a castle, but to be more accurate, let's just call it a defensive structure made of wood that would stop an enemy invading it. Anyway, King Stephen is laying siege to it. He has William Marshal as a hostage. So, King Stephen decides to execute William, to punish his father for going against him. It is hoped that John, in fear of losing his son, will surrender. However, John doesn't surrender. Father of the Year award. The gallows are erected in front of Newbury. William is walked up to the gallows, and in a moment that would look like King Stephen shouting up at John and saying, "I'm going to do it. I'm going to execute this 5, 6, 7-year-old boy, this very young boy of yours, John. Surrender." And John going, I still have the tools to make more, so I don't care. And King Stephen's standing there going, wow, Father of the Year award here. However, King Stephen does eventually back down. It doesn't matter how evil you are or how corrupt you are. I think executing a child is a step too far. William Marshal is taken down from the gallows, and he has several interactions with King Stephen. King Stephen likes him. And it's also how we know that William Marshal speaks French, because King Stephen, carrying on the long tradition of English kings for many, many years to come, speaks not a single word of English.
Please speak English. I enjoy to speak English. It is simple and ugly.
This doesn't stop King Stephen's knights from suggesting more ways to threaten John to surrender, though. One of them, it's said, suggested to catapult the young William Marshal at the walls of Newbury, so his father would surrender. But King Stephen, being merciful, rejected this, which goes to show how low is the bar. You're considered merciful because you won't catapult a child at a castle wall. That's a low bar back then. The siege eventually comes to an end when King Stephen is victorious. Now that the siege is over and Stephen is victorious, it's important to remember, modern listeners, that John Marshal, William's father, may seem harsh for not surrendering at the threat of his son being killed. However, it is very important that we try and judge this by the standards of the day. There was a strict code of conflict when it came to siege warfare. At the beginning of the siege, the defenders were given a chance to surrender. If they didn't surrender, they were allowed to call for help from their lord. A time frame would be accepted when the lord could turn up to defend the castle. However, if the lord didn't turn up and the defenders still didn't surrender, then the lives of everybody in the castle would be forfeit. So maybe John Marshal knew that if he surrendered at that point, there would be hardship. It's really hard to tell. I mean, to my mind, he still deserves Father of the Year. I mean, come on. We do not hear about when William is returned to his family, but he certainly was. Apparently, he enjoyed his time with King Stephen, and King Stephen took a liking to the boy. This was William's first interaction with royalty. Now that William was reunited with his family, his father had a choice to make. Either William stays in England with his 2 brothers and his family, or he can send him away to train how to be a knight. It's important to remember that William is the lower end of nobility. He's not born to purple or anything close to the royal family. He would have to earn his way. So his father decides to send him to Normandy to learn his trade. To be precise, he is sent to Tankerville, We are told in the histories that he is related to the people he is training under, but the House of Tankerville is a loose relation at that. And I think this is a natural stopping point for our prologue. We have been introduced to the world that William has been born into. We have seen his first mention in history. We know that he is now going to travel to Normandy to train how to be a knight. So I feel like this can wait till the next video. Once again, if you have reached this point, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I realise that this is just a prologue, and you may feel disheartened that we didn't talk about William a bit more, but I felt like it was important to discuss the anarchy in this time in history, because it has a big influence on William's life and the world that he inhabits, and knighthood at that time. So, as always, this has been History Laid Bare. I am the Bear. Like and subscribe. Part 2 of William Marshal will be coming soon. Thank you.